All right, so we are back with Grandma's Corner, and we are going to actually have a bit of a Q&A today. So we're going to start with the first question, which is, what did you think it was going to be like when you were young? What did you think getting older was going to be like?
Well, I thought it was going to be like what I had already seen because I was looking at my grandparents and my parents, but I was looking at my grandparents when I was really young, and they were busy, actively involved. Grandpa could make anything, spent a lot of time inventing things. So I assumed that as I got older, I would be just as active and physically capable of doing just about anything
So
because that's what they did.
so what was the first thing that happened that you realized it wasn't going to be like that?
The first thing that happened that began to give me a hint was I was in my 20s and I was going to do some running. I like to be outside, I like being physically active. So I would go running only to find out that I got shin splints every single time. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to ignore that. But then, because I am outdoors a lot and I did like being, I like to go hiking. I think I've hiked almost 2/3 of all the trails in Yosemite Valley. I've been to the top of all the falls and to the basin of every one. Um, I just assumed that was, and my father was making the same hikes. Actually, he was running circles around me, but it felt like I had glass in my foot. And so, as that happened, I realized that wasn't going away. And I was not in the same, I was not doing the same as my parents had done because at their ages, they were still out hitting the trails and I was having trouble. And I really tried hard, I really tried hard to overcome it. And the harder I tried, the harder it got.
So when did you know that it was always going to be an issue?
The last time I went out backpacking, I was I was still in my early 40s, and I came into our night camp in shock. I was in so much pain. I was shaking head to toe. I was not coherent in my thinking process, and I was on my way down. And they just tucked me in my tent, wrapped me with a lot of blankets until the pain stopped. And that was the beginning of my realizing my life was not following the same path.
So what did that do to you, like psychologically or emotionally?
It hit my ego really hard because I have always been able to do what I had to do no matter what. And I'd hit something that didn't work that way. And so it was an adjustment. I had to give up my dream of walking the John Muir Trail from Nevada to the end in California. And that would have taken us past Yosemite and into Sequoia and on down. And that really was a bummer for me.
So how did you overcome that
Well,
psychologically, emotionally?
I didn't overcome it. I just had to accept it. And that is a long journey. When those things happen in your life and you can see that life isn't as you thought it was, you have to mourn some of it. You try to recreate something to take its place. And I could do that. I went from being the backpacking leader to the lake monster, where I would swim in the lake by the dock, and the students or the kids, the girls, had to rescue me, and they would throw the lifesaver at me a few times, hitting me in the head.
I remember that with the big floppy hat.
And I had a big red hat, so all you could see was my hat going along the river or the lake edge there.
Because we were practicing rescue techniques up at the lake. Yeah,
you had to be
at girls'
able
camp.
to rescue. You had to be able to tip your canoe over and flood it, and all those things. So that's where I ended up for the next little while, was being the lake monster, and I continued with my camping things, but in a different way.
So did you grow from that in a different way?
I did. I began to internalize it differently due to two things. One, we were in an earthquake, and it was a very traumatic earthquake.
Which earthquake was that?
That was in Saugus in 1970.
Okay.
And it took down the overpasses to the freeway. And our power was out, and we weren't sure our water was going to be on. And I realized that I needed to step up in a different way. So I took my camping skills and I took them in the direction of surviving disasters. And I began to teach how to live in your backyard for a long time without your house.
So you still found ways to do what you loved.
Oh, I did.
But
I began
more
to
in a
teach it.
teaching.
In fact, I expanded it. I began teaching adults instead of just children,
right.
Teenagers.
And did you get fulfillment from that?
I did. For those who understood it, yes, they began to realize they were not prepared. And being prepared is part of what I believe in. And so, yes, I was gratified some joined me.
So, looking back now, then, what would you say would be like the major thing you learned from not being able, from your feet starting to go bad? What was kind of the big takeaway from that? Or is there one?
Humility comes in there right off the top. My feet didn't stop me from continuing to work hard. I still built stone walls and moved concrete and worked hard, but it taught me that I had to compartmentalize what I was doing. And I had to recognize when I had reached the point where I should stop. I couldn't push through things. And so I approached things a little humbler.
Maybe a little more self-aware, you think?
I became very self-aware because what happens to me fell upon my children.
Yeah, because you had how many? You had like 9 of us by then, so. Well, but yeah, by the time you were in your 40s, I was there.
By the time I was in my 40s, I had 9 children.
But yeah, there were people that were relying on you, so.
Yeah, and when I was down, I had a knee that would dislocate. And when I was down, it affected my family. So I had to rearrange my life and find all the cues to when I had to stop and understand when I shouldn't start at all.
So you could say, I guess, that you started to find a different sense of balance.
Oh, yeah.
Which was more important to the unit as a whole as opposed to just you individually.
Yeah. I had my own personal balance because that's what we live with.
Right.
I am what I am. So, yes, but I did learn to begin to put my life in balance. It didn't stop there. That was just
Right.
the first step.
And we will continue with the next step next time. So just to end off this one, what would you say, like a good piece of advice for that first step?
Stop and evaluate why you're doing what you're doing. And is it really as important for you or for everybody? And what were the consequences?
Nice.
You've got to stop and
Think.
be honest.
Nice.
You've got to be honest with yourself. You may never be honest with anybody else, but you have got to be honest with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mama. We'll get this posted. And then we look forward to next time. If you guys have any questions, feel free to send them in and we'll ask Mom your questions.